Hello there, this is Alina in my channel Enough. Today I'm saying enough of Russian aggression in Ukraine. Today in Canada and in the United States, still August 24th, which is 180th day of the war, and for 6 months Russia unleashed full-scale invasion in Ukraine. The war itself started earlier. It started in 2014 by Putin, and it started in Crimea. If you want to know more about the war in general, you could watch my video called this one, which called Why Russia is an Aggressor in Ukraine. This would be a generic video. If you want to go more into details and find out more about what was happening in Crimea, which is part of Ukraine, but Russia annexed it and pretending it's a Russian territory, which it is not. By all international law, it's a territory of Ukraine. You're welcome to watch this video, which called Who is Responsible for the War in Ukraine? And there would be proofs and facts in the video itself and in the description of the video. If you want to go more into details and find out proofs, you can watch this video, Putin admits Crimea belongs to Ukraine, or this one, and this one, Russian FSB officer Strelkov admits I started the war in Ukraine. So this man, Mr. Strelkov, Girkin, his real name, FSB officer who actually started that war in Ukraine, in Crimea and in Donbass in 2013-2014. Today we will talk to you about how it was all starting, and on my site I was posting some information which I received in the first days of the war from my friends, Russian-speaking writers, Ukrainians in Ukraine. They were in Ukraine. I know them for a couple years before the war, and we were writing books on the marathons, and we become friends. And that's what my friends was writing in the very first hours, the first days of the war. For instance, cowardly at night, while we were sleeping peacefully, our cities were bombed. Civilians are already been killed. I feel like I want to wake up, but it is not a dream. This is just awful. Shock, pain, panic, a fear that holds the throat and it doesn't let you go. I did not believe it was possible that Russia would attack Ukraine. For what? Why? They will mean. Ukrainian writers, they did not know what was happening and they didn't know why it's happening. This is one of the statements. February 24th, 2022. Yes, the whole world said there would be an invasion, but we did not believe it. It seemed impossible. It seemed that they exaggerate, that it will not happen. After all, Russians are our brothers and we have all mixed up 100 times. We have common roots, friends and families. And today I woke up at 5:30 a.m. to the sounds of explosions. And this is Kiev. Beautiful capital city, Kiev and Rus. How so? I'm not afraid for myself. I'm ready. I'm afraid for the children of both countries. What it is for them. Today, I had the experience of waking up my kids, screaming to them to dress up immediately and be ready to run into a bomb shelter. I wouldn't wish this on anyone. And this was from Anastasia from Kiev, my amazing Ukrainian friend. And so was many other Ukrainians. And that senseless war Putin started in Ukraine, killing people on both sides. My Ukrainian friends were right. And they are Russian-speaking Ukrainians. And for them it was shock. They couldn't understand why Russia attacked Ukraine. And many people in Russia who believe Putin's propaganda, saying a whole bunch of different stories about Nazis, which doesn't exist. Well, no more Nazis in Ukraine than in any other country, and so on. So I had to stand up for Ukraine. I had to stand up for my friends. I had to stand up for my friends in Russia and in Ukraine who are getting killed in this conflict. That is why I created my channel. And it's called Enough. And on my channel, I'm proving who I am. And in my playlist about the war in Ukraine. I explaining a lot about this war. I explaining in Russian and in English. As you can see right here, different videos. And about why it happening, what happening, whose fault is this. This is about comparison of Russian and Ukrainian Nazis and so on. And disproving Russian propaganda, fighting Russian trolls. Because Russian trolls activated now quite a bit and trying to prevent Ukraine from receiving support from the rest of the world. But the rest of the world will not stop helping Ukraine, and it's not gonna happen. So many Russians were saying that they're supposed to defend Donbass, which Putin started the war there. Putin could have stopped it at any time. Yet Putin himself and his politicians, kind of like Matviyenko, for instance, when United Nations offered to interfere and bring forces of United Nations in Donbass, several times. I heard from Mr. Nevzorov, the Russian journalist, that it was 11 times, at least, in 2014 and stuff, United Nations offering help. And Matviyenko said at the time, it's not logical to bring United Nations forces in Donbass. And Russian Federation was vetoing everything about that and continuing that senseless war, which they started and they were continuing. According to the United Nations report, about, I mentioned it in my other videos, but the total number of civilians was killed 3,404, and 102 boys and 50 girls, so 152 children. And right now it's already 380 children died. This is 152 was for 8 years. And now 340 children died in 6 months in Ukraine. So who is actually get protected here? And I'm not talking even about of other losses. According to BBC, which was based their research on popular politics channel, saying about that BBC based on a report in on the United Nations report, and saying that civilians in time period from 24th of February to 22nd of August, which confirmed, and when they know who they are by the name, 5,587 killed and 7,890 wounded. And in total losses, basically in Ukraine, it's about 6,000 or so, according to Ukrainian Mr. Podolyak, the advisor of President Zelensky, and about 10,000 probably wounded and about 6,000 dead. But this is completely confirmed victims among peaceful people. So who is Russia defending in Ukraine?
Около 5,000.
And another thing is destruction. Total destruction. $113.5 billion. It's just documented how much things were destroyed. Which to replace all of this would be need about $200 billion to replace whatever was destructed in Ukraine. And this all would come, or most part of it, from the pocket of Russians. Because oligarchs, hopefully because of sanctions, oligarchs would pay for that. But Russian Federation claiming that they don't bombing civilian objects and like schools and hospitals, yet 261 schools completely destroyed, 127 hospitals. So what kind of defense is that? Who is Russia defending? it was senseless attack, Ukraine getting destroyed, and we have to remember about that. I want to remind my foreign friends from different countries that Ukraine standing between us and Putin. Ukrainian people dying on the front today, every day, for 6 months already, trying to protect us from Putin's regime, from Putin's aggression, and from basically new fascism. Putin turned my country, Russia, into fascist country. And unfortunately, some of the European leaders in the past, even in 2014, they didn't help enough Ukraine. They did not stand up enough. Yeah, there was few sanctions here and there, but it wasn't put on Putin and oligarchs and their families themselves. And that's why Putin decided that it's okay to do stuff like that in the middle of Europe. He started the war in Ukraine. He occupying right now the biggest nuclear power plant in Europe and threatening people, threatening the world. In Ukraine right now, over 12 million people left their home. Many of them ended up in Europe. And it just, it's awful. People lose, and many was, in Europe ended up about 6,650,000 people. And about as much, little less, displaced within Ukraine. They moved to different parts of Ukraine. Many people don't have even bomb shelters where they live. I know some of my friends were sitting in the corridors because they said in the bathroom is kind of tiles and mirrors, and in the living room there are windows with glass, and they could get hurt. And that senseless destruction and murdering Ukrainian people and all that atrocities in Bucha, Irpin, and other cities, Putin denies that. Putin's still thinking that he can win. But something changed. Ukrainians are independent nation. It really aggravated me and annoys me and make me angry when Russian people or even some foreign people from other countries, from free countries, started to say that, well, saying that Ukrainians kind of puppets in somebody's game, that somebody pulling the strings behind their back, that the United States is at fault of something and something. It's all wrong. I know Ukrainian people. I talk to Russian-speaking Ukrainians. I talk to Ukrainian-speaking Ukrainians. I talking to them daily, basically. Some of them already left Ukraine, some of them still in Ukraine. And I know what Ukrainian people want. Ukrainian people want freedom. They wanted their country back. They will not stop. And this is their choice. Well, basically, they don't have a choice. They either stand up or they're gonna die. Putin intend to destroy the whole Ukraine, kill Ukrainians, and he doesn't hide that. He's completely saying what's gonna happen. But something changed, and I would like to say also that many countries helping. One of these countries is Canada. Canada put sanctions on the oligarchs, Putin and his family members. Canada was one of the first countries to put sanctions on Alina Kabaeva, the Putin's lover and CEO of the big media group, who is directly responsible for the propaganda of the war in Ukraine. And Great Britain and Canada and the United States and some other countries and Germany and other countries helping Ukraine. Unfortunately, some of the politicians in some countries like Germany and France, for instance, some of them get paid and will get paid, and they were in the CEOs in Russian corporations. And one of them is Mr. Schroeder. And these people should be under the sanctions as well. Schroeder recently visited Moscow, and he lied about it to to people who was journalists, saying he's there on a vacation, but no. He was there to talk to Putin, and his wife even admitted that. And Schroeder really contributed a lot to rise of Putin and supporting Putin. And so is a few politicians in European countries. please remember that suffering you're having right now just because you have to keep your house a little bit cooler than you used to, or something like that. There is nothing to compare with what's happening in Ukraine. And if you not support Ukraine now and you did not give them enough weapons and everything, the war will come to your doorstep. Yeah, Putin right now doesn't have money to do so, but he will someday. And it's not gonna stop on Ukraine. Russians already talking about many countries, Moldova, Latvia, Poland. They're talking about bombing other countries, like even France and Germany. So Ukraine right now defending your country as well as their own. And we need to help them. I want us to listen a little bit to what Mr. Zelensky has to say, because it's a big game changer, and I will explain you in a minute why. This is on the channel Popular Politics with Mr. Volkov and Mr. Nizovtsev.
Ми тримаємось 6 місяців. Нам важко, але ми стиснули кулаки і вигризаємо свою долю.
We are fighting for 6 months already. It is very hard for us, but we tighten our fists and we are sunk our teeth into our fate. We're holding up to our fate.
Кожен новий день – це нова причина не здаватись.
Every new day is a new reason not to give up.
Бо пройшовши стільки всього, ми не маємо права не дійти до кінця.
Because after we have been through what we have been through, we don't have a right to not to go all the way until the end.
Що для нас кінець війни?
What for us mean the end of the war?
Раніше ми говорили «мир».
In the past we were saying it's peace.
Зараз кажемо «перемога».
But now we're saying it's victory. Why this is important, what Mr. Zelensky says? It because talks about peace could have worked out in the first days of the war, in the first months of the war, 1 month maybe. But now, for Ukraine, it's too late. Big chunk of the country destroyed. Russia bombing cities in Ukraine from Russian territory. Even from Russian territory, like city of Kharkiv. I have few friends from Kharkiv. Some of them there right now. They get bombed daily. And for Ukrainians, it's not the question what they want. It's not the question, do they want to get Crimea back or don't they? They say they do, and they want their old territories back, which belong to them according to international law, and whole world agree with that. Ukrainians has the mind of their own, and they had voting done recently. They had polls done. They all supporting Mr. Zelensky, and they want him to continue fighting. It because they don't have other choice. Russia standing at this point that they're gonna destroy and kill them all. Putin will never forgive Ukraine for Ukraine fighting against him, and he will not rest until he kill them all. And you cannot rebuild the country. Like, you can't rebuild Kharkiv. They started to rebuild it and they get bombed again on daily basis. From Russian territory, Russians don't even have to come there. That is why it's not a choice. It's choice to live or to die. And Ukrainians fighting, and they're gonna fight to the death. Or to the victory. I hope it would be the victory. Why? Because the victory in Ukraine, and if Ukraine take back Crimea and all the territories that belong to Ukraine, it will mean for Russians the collapse of Putin's regime. His lies will catch up to him because he doesn't say how many Russians died. We just talked about the losses of Ukraine. It sounds like 5,700 deaths confirmed completely, like with names and everything. But in fact, there is some information that it's 20,000 Russians died, but it's very, very little information about that. And I personally, through my sources, know that even in the first months, like in March sometime, probably end of March, the losses of Russian troops in Ukraine was already 10,000. and there was way more after that. It's now Ukrainians saying it's about 40,000, which is very realistic in my opinion, and in the information I have from some reliable resources of United States analytics and so on. And I would say that if you multiply that 4 or 5 times, you will receive wounded. And always people who are attacking, they're losing more soldiers and everything. Yet Putin does not tell in Russians that it is even war. Russians go into jail for 15 years if they call it a war. Putin doesn't tell Russians how many people died in the war in Ukraine. The last numbers was 1,000 something in March or something like that. And since then, what, Russians thinking that the war going on without blood, that Russians not dying in that war? What kind of stupidity is that? To believe in that kind of thing. It's a war, and Russians dying a lot. Yes, Ukraine now using Western weapons, and we see it in the internet, that they're blowing up military objects like ammunition depots and stuff like that. They don't shoot in civilians like Russians doing in Vinnytsia and some other places. That is why the victory of Ukraine, this is the only logical and good outcome for everyone, except for Putin. Putin started this war. He could have taken his troops out of Ukraine very easily. He chose not to. Right now, in the Ukrainian city Mariupol, Russian-speaking city, which Russians leveled, they're very proud that they rebuilt a traffic light. One traffic light in 500,000 people city. But they're very preoccupied with the building cages, like for animals, where they're thinking to make like a fake tribunal, like in Stalin times, when they were making a tribunals, a courts, pretend to be courts, where they put people who they want to execute and pretend that they judge them, pretend that they give them a justice of some sort. What justice? And they want to put in these cages the soldiers from Ukrainian battalion Azov, which Russians for some reason thinking they are Nazis. It's not true. Azov battalion was defending Ukrainian city of Mariupol in Ukraine. They were kidnapped, and under the Geneva Convention, they give up by the order of their government. Eventually, they lay down the weapons, and they were guaranteed by the Red Cross, by a whole bunch of countries, that they're not gonna be executed. And now Russians planning fake court in Mariupol, and they're building like cages for them, like present them to Russians like they're animals, they're Nazis, they are evil or something like that. People who defended their country, Ukraine, get captured in Ukraine, and then they were moved to the so-called Donetsk, Lugansk republics, which nobody recognized. And this is outright disgusting and terrible. On the bright side, I can say that countries standing up with Ukraine, that people like Boris Johnson, for instance, they helping Ukraine and providing weapons and providing for Ukraine support. And Mr. Zelensky could be assured that our country is gonna support Ukraine and help Ukraine. I heard that right now, during the Independence Day of Ukraine, I want to say Happy Independence Day to Ukrainians. It's not very happy because there is a war on their territory, but Ukraine is independent country. And Mr. Johnson, wasn't afraid to come to Ukraine, even Russians were threatening bombing it on the Ukrainian Independence Day. And it sounds like another $63 million Ukraine will receive as a help from Great Britain. And we are standing with you, Ukraine. Canada is with you, and United States, and many other countries. It's countries of European Union, it's Great Britain, which is Mr. Johnson, was very brave of him to come and show up in Ukraine and to talk to Mr. Zelensky and to support Ukraine. Putin can hope for whatever he wants, but our countries will not stop supporting Ukraine. We will not forget about this war, and we will continue fighting for Ukraine and for Russia, for Russian people, not for Putin, but for Russian people who doesn't want this war and not supporting Putin's regime. That's what I'm doing on my channel. And the last thing I want to say in this video is there was very strange thing happened recently, and this woman was killed in Russia. It's a daughter of Mr. Dugin, Daria Dugina, and people made in Russia such a big deal out of it, and seems like, oh boy, terrorist attack, she was blown up in her car. That in the record time, FSB said that they find the person who did it and they blaming it on Ukraine and so on. It's absolutely useless waste of time to even watch that FSB investigations and stuff like that. They couldn't find the murderers of Boris Nemtsov for over 5,000 days or so, and they couldn't find murderers of Russian journalist Politkovskaya in about 7,000 something days. And now in 2 days, they completely faked some sort of an investigation, which is absolutely useless. Why? Ukraine and many people in Ukraine have no idea who Dugina is. I hardly heard of her myself. Yes, I heard of her father, Mr. Dugin, who they called, oh, philosopher, or he's something behind the Putin's kind of Putin's guru or whatever, kind of Russian Rasputin. None of it is relevant. Dugin himself is just, it took me 2 minutes watching his video to understand that he's right-wing, delusional, basically fascist person who, I don't know with what century he even living. He talking about stuff like right is might and so on, like centuries ago the world, some countries in the world, some kings believe in that type of stuff. So it's absolutely nonsense that Ukraine, and even according to Mr. Podolyak, Mr. Podolyak is an advisor for President Zelensky, and a whole bunch of other information sources I have, Ukraine doesn't know who Dugina is. Many people does not know and doesn't care neither of her about her or her father. To go on that kind of extent to execute somebody, there was way more, much more famous propagandists in Russia to go after than to spend time on that. Absolutely, basically nobody. Yeah, she said that Bucha was faked and this and that, but so is a whole bunch of other propagandists, and to make her a target, it just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Anyways, I want to tell that Ukraine will stand and Ukraine will win. They don't have other choice. They have to win, and they will. And I know personally Ukrainian people. Ukrainian people are brave. Ukrainian people are noble. And so is many Russians too. Many of them against Putin fighting right now. So we will win, we will prevail, and the world will help. The world will help Ukraine. The world will help Russian people who is against Putin. Putin's regime will fail, will fall. Why do I know that? Because all the dictatorship regimes fell in the past. All of them. And it will happen sooner than you think. Happy Independence Day, Ukraine. The war will be stopped. Ukraine will win. And we will be victorious. We will live. Let's live. And hugs to all of you. And have a great day.